They're going to do 72 hours.
But Judge Johnson says lawmakers forgot to change the policy on electronic monitoring. So in some cases, a convicted drunk driver could go straight to monitoring and never hit the jail. Add to that,
Cook says there's been only one visitor.
When's the last time you visited your great-great-grandfather's gravesite? The sad truth is, with each passing generation, memories fade. Vandals become more frequent visitors. So historians are trying to preserve these monuments to San Antonio's past before they disappear too.
It has a tendency to roll over because it has a high center of gravity.
Wigington says the high center of gravity is caused by the narrow track width, and he says that causes the exterior to roll over when it shouldn't.
And electric appliances didn't appear suspicious either.
By the time they arrived, it was all volunteer firefighters could do just to keep these flames from spreading. Now this fire burned hot. How hot? Hot enough to literally melt the wheels off this car.
It was the kind of fire that threatened to spread to neighbors' homes. Then we got the cold shoulder.
Randy says they do everything legally, above the board, and they've never ripped off anyone. But just as they did 3 years ago in San Antonio, when we started asking questions and shooting a little bit of video here in Houston, they slammed the doors on us.
We figured they'd recognize a call from a Ken's 5 cell phone, so we went to a payphone to try to beat the caller ID.
Rang 15 times. They still didn't pick up. They won't answer a cell phone, they won't answer a payphone. They're not going to talk. Every time we've asked the Health and Human Services Commission for information on their investigation into Randy's, they've cited a previous Attorney General's opinion that says they don't have to share that information. So we came to Austin to try to talk with Attorney General Greg Abbott, who issued that previous ruling. But his press office says it would be premature for the Attorney General to get involved in the investigation. And they wouldn't even let us see it.
Which left us no choice but to again drive to Houston, the company's founder and president, Randy Diggs.
Just as they did when we went to the Randy's locations in San Antonio and in Houston, when we went to the Randy's location here in Dallas, they closed the doors on us. And they took it one step further. They locked the gates and wouldn't even let us on the property.
That's just how it is, sir.
By the time the HD conversion happens in 2009, some experts predict more than 300,000 televisions could end up in landfills. Which brings up this question. What happens to all the junk inside these TVs?
Right now we have
better tools to treat their canine patients.
It's been an hour since Cisco had his chemotherapy and he's doing great. Unlike humans, very few animals get nauseated. They're hardier, and there's the psychological component. Animals don't know those drugs can make them sick.
everything that we learn in animals.
She's trying to get us a house, and she finally does, and this happens.
The homeowners' troubles aren't just on the inside, they're also on the outside. They showed representatives from Ryland Homes some cracks in the exterior finish on their wall, cracks that they say go beyond that, beneath the home, to the foundation. But so far, Ryland's not admitting there's any foundation problems.
We'll have to change things up a little bit.
This is the second largest room in the cave. It's known as the Council of the White Giants. Now, typically tours would come right through this area, but right now we're knee-deep in the Glen Rose Aqua.
In the past decade, it's actually come into this room we're standing in.
So starting here at the fire station, we decided to see exactly how far you'd have to travel. We zeroed our counter and then drove to the scene. And when we got all the way back over here, our odometer said it was less than 0.6 of a mile.
Or maybe you'd rather have someone put your body out in the open where the birds and the coyotes can eat you. It's so natural. Well, you can't do that legally in Texas, at least not yet.
Steve Gerline believes that future is literally days away.
We're driving around in Gerline's Lexus 470 SUV with the hydrogen generator on, just doing normal driving, starting, stopping, even reaching speeds of 50, 60 miles an hour. I can't tell any difference in the way the engine's running.
For people like Tiffany, the website is free and it's convenient, but while you're saving on gas, could you be sacrificing your safety?
Principi says he cut all ties to QTC during his tenure as head of the VA. Still, the company's revenue skyrocketed from $8 million in 1998 to $246 million in 2005.
The Parks Department response was, we have been out there and do not see a problem.
To be fair, the trash is down in an area that's really hard to see from the road that cuts through the park. But what Eyewitness wants to know is, why did it take the county so long to begin cleaning it up? Unfortunately, in the last 5 years, 219 prison employees lacked that honesty and integrity. They were caught trying to sneak in contraband to inmates. And already this year, 31 more have been busted. Zygmunt says in June he hit 99,030 miles. So he called warranty experts to start the paperwork to get his money back. The salesman told him, bring in a notarized odometer reading and the paperwork. At the end of the day, Zygmunt had hit 99,123 miles.
I got a letter.
A plain and simple W. When you add it all up, this change will cost the school nearly $100,000. It doesn't matter who you are, that's quite a financial hit. But even when the state gets around to inspecting a dam, it's often years before any work is done, if at all. Repairing dams is expensive, and the state does not mandate how quickly these troubled dams need to be fixed.
Why are we creating this opulent, lounge of luxury?
Yes, the Texas Capitol is a big, beautiful building, and everybody wants to keep it that way. But Eyewitness wants to know, how do you justify spending $140,000 on a lounge?
I don't feel it's outrageous.
So Eyewitness wants to know, if your neighbor's tree falls and puts a big hole in their roof and their insurance company pays, why is it an act of God if it hits your car and the insurance company doesn't have to pay? Ultimately, the city's plan is to have more of this, to create a little more urban area in downtown. And that project includes planting more trees. But opponents say these trees won't be like those trees. Despite the fact that dozens of school kids, people with disabilities, even the visually impaired who use service dogs are forced to walk down these well-worn, sometimes muddy paths, the city says sidewalks here are not their responsibility.
As for how all this will work, it's really not much different than any other book. You still have to have your library card, you still have to check it out, only the living books are due in 30 minutes.
Now, we understand HEB can't be held responsible for all the baskets that leave their property. Here's a great example. We found this one in the brush more than a mile from the nearest store. But when a car slams into one in the middle of the street in front of a store, you would think HEB would take responsibility. The government issued the $40 coupons to make converter boxes like this one, which sells for $50, more affordable for everybody, especially people like Sam Valente. And if you run into a problem with yours the way he did, there's a number you can call, 1-888-DTV-2009. Now, if you're watching something you think we need to check out, give me a call, 377-8647, or send an email to ewtk@kens5.com. Barry Davis, Eyewitness wants to know. They immediately called David and told him not to worry. They would take care of it. A subcontractor has up to 2 years to execute that mechanic's lien, basically foreclose on the property. Chicago Title says that rarely happens, and even if it does, the title company is the one that pays off the subcontractor, so they're the ones that are on the hook. The folks who live here admit there are existing power poles, but they say most of the utilities are underground, and what aggravates them the most is the way they say AT&T kind of backdoored the whole process. The Dow hit an all-time high of more than 14,000 points in October of 2007. At that time, Elsie Wilford says she was trying to cash in her investment accounts with this Chase Bank. 18 months later, her money is still here, and it's nowhere near the same amount. At another shop, Contreras says he never authorized his van to be brought out here. Marcus Cantu says Contreras knew where the van was headed. He thinks it's now just a question of whether Contreras wants to pay to have it repaired. Contreras.
You get aggravated too.
Despite asking several times for them to stop calling, the charity wouldn't. So Ed turned the tables. He picked up the phone and dialed their 866 number, which cost them every time he made the call.
So I left 41 urgent messages.
They changed their rules and regulations.
It's not that drinking the water is going to kill you. It's just that the EPA says if you drink too much of it, say maybe 20 years worth or more, it could lead to cancer.
If you drink 2 liters of water a day.
And drive them back down.
6068 Denver, please see United representative to claim your channel.
The Davenports say the move and the flight went off without a hitch until they opened the sergeant's duffel bag. That's when they discovered the helmet had been stolen, and now apparently United says, too bad.
All they could do was offer me travel vouchers.
And this wasn't the first time Benson had called 911. No, she had called multiple times before, tying up multiple dispatchers.
Alonzo says if it were his money, he'd probably just let it go. But it's not. He says it's money they raised for the team through fundraisers. And he says without that money, the team doesn't exist.
Our team we're suspended. We're not doing nothing.
They say the owner voluntarily surrendered the property about 6 months ago.
Starkey says they had someone send them 60 photographs of the place, and now they have a little better picture of what it looks like. They say they didn't know it was this bad, and they're not wasting any time cleaning it up.
Starkey says they've already issued a work order. That was more than a month ago. Since then, the brothers have closed up the shop and dropped off the face of the earth.
After we first aired our story about A&S Engine Rebuilders, we got a lot of calls from people who said they too had their cars here or parts inside the shop. Fortunately, we also got a call from someone who said he wanted to help.
Well, I'm just assisting my sister return the vehicles to the rightful owners.
The city still cuts what it calls safety easements along the curbs. If they didn't, you wouldn't even be able to see the street signs. The problem is this land is now in a designated flood zone, which means Bearland Holdings won't ever be able to build anything here. In fact, right now, Code Compliance has 14 cases against Bearland Holdings. They owe the city more than $2,500 for not cutting lots just like this all over San Antonio.
I don't want to cut down like my yard is.
But the bootman said that wasn't enough.
The sign says $1.50 daily, unless, of course, you park after 4. So you pull into the parking lot, park your hot rod in space number 22, walk up to the cash box, and make sure you put that $1.50 in slot 22. Because you don't want your car booted, but you don't realize it's $5 on weekends until you look way up.
Ironically, Miles says
work on the project went pretty well for about the first 6 weeks. Then one day, Gibbs says she had to pay Madla's workers. The work kept getting slower and slower, and eventually Madla himself just disappeared. We were out here just a few minutes and found almost a dozen screws, staples, and big nails like this one that Pavoda says he was told should have been taken out of these wood chips. Sullivan says he shouldn't have to pay the storage fees either. He says if Arco hadn't taken the car apart without his authorization, it wouldn't be locked up behind this fence. So we went to the cleaners to talk to Hannah about that missing Confederate jacket. And you might say she opened fire on us.
I don't understand what you're talking about.
Saws says they capped the lines in the alley, and it's clear there's no water running here. But it is running downhill, forming a nasty mess for Strong, who says it gets a lot worse depending on the weather. Code Compliance did exactly what they said they were going to do. They sent a crew out here, cut the weeds, and had the place cleaned up, all before 1 o'clock Monday afternoon.
This is the new face of public housing, a mixed-income apartment complex in the heart of downtown designed to change what was once a rundown part of San Antonio.